Welcome to the Career Creator Podcast, where we highlight the stories of everyday women moving through fear to make changes in their life and career. Thanks for being here. I'm your host, Rachel. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Career Creator Podcast. I am so excited today. We have Betsy Hicks with us, who is the designer and principal at Front Door Design in Austin, Texas. How are you, Betsy?
I'm great today. Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here. I know we had a conversation before this just so I could learn a little more about you, and I think your story is going to really help people. So, love to just kick us off with a first question. Tell me, growing up, what was your ideal career? What was the thing that you told people when they asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Well, I went back and forth probably between fashion designer and interior designer. I was always interested in both of those kind of creative pursuits. And I, just depending on the stage of my life or what I kind of had going on, I was able to learn a little bit about both of those just because of the fostering of my family and my mom, especially. She taught me how to sew when I was really, really young. And so that really sparked my creativity and my hands-on learning. And I learned that I really like to do things with my hands and I like to create things. So that was probably the impetus for that. And then also and my dad were very supportive of the ideas that I had and how I wanted to decorate my room. That started at a really young age. One of the first rooms that I remember this was in the late 70s. So I had shag blue carpet and blue and white striped awning type wallpaper on, 3 of my walls. And then my fourth wall, I wanted a rainbow with these specific pastel rainbow colors. So my dad, being an engineer, did a line and a string and chalked it out for me and drew it and we painted it. And, I had the coordinating pillows I wanted the colors to coordinate to the rainbow and on and on. So thankfully my parents were supportive of that and really kind of fostered that in me. I didn't know it at the time, but I look back on it now and I realize kind of where some of my passions came from. So so interior design and fashion design.
I love how supportive they were. And I wonder if that has anything to do with you actually going into that field and ending up there because those skills were cultivated at such an early age.
I think absolutely. Because when I was deciding college and what I wanted to study in college, it was fashion design. Because at that time in my life, I was very much into fashion. I had designed and made most of my prom and formal dresses and not only formals, but just day-to-day stuff. I made a swimsuit. I was constantly making things for my sister and my friends. And so I felt really comfortable in that world. And that was a passion of mine already before I went to college. So when I landed and, wanted to go to the University of Texas, I was thrilled to find out that they had a degree in, what I wanted to study. And so it made it really an easy decision for me. There wasn't really anything else I was contemplating other than maybe meteorology, which is a total change from that. I've always been obsessed with the weather and I do like science. But I decided that I didn't really want to be on camera and do that sort of thing. And I really wanted to do things with my hands. That really was, what led me to fashion design.
When you think about your path, you said you went to the University of Texas for college, majored in fashion design. How did you decide what was your first job? Because that's a huge space. There's so many different things you can do. What helped you kind of narrow that down?
Yes. Well, there's so many things to do. And I will say, when I graduated in 1994 in Austin, Texas, there wasn't a lot of fashion going on in Austin, period. There was a little bit going on in Texas. This is really before any e-commerce or anything like that. So it's all very much still localized in New York and California. So I started out in Austin. I was fortunate enough, my program, you do an internship. And so I was fortunate enough to do kind of 2 internships. And one I interned locally with a woman who did custom furniture and furnishings and kind of the interiors work. And then another company that focused on selling and modifying wedding gowns. So I got to work with the brides and selling the gowns. And then I also worked and mentored under a woman there that had worked forever and ever in all the modifications and the alterations and sometimes almost remaking of the wedding gowns. So I did those 2 internships in tandem my senior year. And then I stayed on in Austin, wasn't quite ready to leave. Austin has a way of doing that to you. So I stayed on for another year and worked in both of those capacities. And then I decided I needed to take the step. I needed to get out of Austin and try to do more with my career. And I wanted to do more and move into, bigger markets. And so I went to Dallas for a short time, about 6 months, and realized that there wasn't much there for me either. And then I decided to move to New York City under the prodding of some friends of mine. And that's something I never thought I would do. I thought, oh, I'm a Texas girl. I'm going to stay here.
Yeah.
But, youth has a way of, we think we have it all figured out when we're young. And then, so I've learned in my life, never say never, because you never know what you're going to do or what you're going to want to do. So anyway, that I ended up going to New York City and pursuing working in the bridal area in general. When I started out there, that's kind of what I targeted, and was able to find a position as an assistant for a very small startup business. And so I was the first employee there, and that was great. And that was what I would consider really my first, that was when I felt like I really was, in my first job, although I had the other jobs leading up to it that sort of informed it and helped lead to it.
Okay, so you went the bridal route versus the interior route to start off.
Yes, I did. I
Okay.
did. That was, that was the world that I felt most comfortable in. And that was, that was my passion. And so I went that route, and I worked, this first company that I worked for, we designed really high end, pretty bridesmaid dresses that were to be used like beyond a wedding setup scenario. That was the idea of the woman that I worked for. And she was really passionate, and she was an MBA and a math major. And so she really had the business side of it. And I was bringing in, and she had the creativity as well, but I was coming in with the skills. And so we were I was a great asset to her. And I learned a lot from her too about running a small business. And I learned so much, working in the garment district of New York, about just everything, and about how you can just jump in and really, really, really go for it. So that gave me a lot of confidence just in general in my life to, if you can do something like that, you tell yourself, I can do anything. I can do anything I put my mind to. If I can move to New York City without a job and figure it out, within, 3 weeks, I had a job, and, and was doing what I wanted to do, and getting the experiences that I wanted to. So that gave me a lot of confidence.
It sounds like you're really in charge of your career starting out at that point. You were very intentional in saying, this is the type of experience I want.
Mm-hmm.
You worked in New York, being very intentional about, in the US, that is the place to be if you are in fashion. I'm curious, with that experience, you talked about the confidence it gave you. Is that when the bug for entrepreneurship was sparked in you, or was that something that was not on your radar? Because I know you went to entrepreneurship a few times later on.
Mm-hmm. Probably. And I think it probably is just, I'm sure it sparked it when I, that first job that I worked in New York. I'm sure that did, because I really was just coming in at the ground level with her, and got to see all that firsthand, and realize that, here she is, she's doing this in New York City. And, without having she didn't have a ton of fashion experience. She had an MBA from Harvard, and she was bright and, smart, and had some seed money to get started. But, I think that was inspiring to be able to see that. It's sort of like pulling a curtain back on something and going, you know what? This is very doable. There's nothing stopping you from trying this and doing it. So I think so. And also, I just think it's my personality also. I mean, I've definitely learned that over time, that I enjoy kind of running my own show, really. But, I learned a lot along the way from different avenues and different times and stints in my career, doing different things and different aspects, been able to do design and merchandising and buying for department stores. And then, then had about in entrepreneurship, and then, came back to it. And then now entrepreneur in the interior design business.
So tell me about, you went from employee of one startup company. Mm-hmm. You are both just figuring it out, trying to see, how does this work? What is the business? I'm sure things were different every day. What was that transition like, going from startup person of like one employee, you all total, but being first employee besides the founder, to working for these larger retail companies as a buyer? What did that feel like? What were some of the challenges there?
Yeah, it's really different. So after I worked that first job, after about a year and a half, I was exhausted. I worked really, really hard and didn't make much money. And I decided, you know what, now's a time for me to step back and maybe try to get some experience at a larger firm, just to kind of get some, I think I was hungry for more, and wanted more growth and more opportunity that I could have at this small company. And so from there, I went and worked for Calvin Klein in production. And that was completely different. I was working, when I worked for the entrepreneur, I did a little bit of everything, which was wonderful. I got to design, I got to make patterns, I got to make prototypes. I mean, I got to design the dress that one of my girlfriends wore, that I wore in her wedding. And then,
Oh, that sounds
so
special.
really cool stuff, like that. Where then when I was working at Calvin Klein, obviously I was not doing that. I was working in a very focused area on men's. We did just like one certain line of men's CK, and we took a product from like after the designers designed it, we took it from all the stages of its prototype. So basically all the fittings and which
Okay.
was one part of what I did at my previous job, but it was a very focused, smaller part of the job. I will
Mm.
tell you, it was easier. It was less stressful.
Yes.
It paid better, and I got to sit down a little bit. So, those were good things in my life at that time. I was really pretty strung out, just work wise, and not, probably wasn't the healthiest situation that I was in, just because I worked so hard. But I wouldn't trade it for anything because I learned so much. So the juxtaposition between those two, it was really completely different, completely opposite. I enjoyed facets of both of them. But then it was good. I enjoyed the difference on that. And then from Calvin Klein, I transitioned into buying because I left New York City. I met my husband
Mm.
and we dated long distance, and then we decided we were going to get engaged. So I moved to Chicago, and Chicago is not known as a mecca for fashion. So I did find, a good job there. I first worked for a company that designed clothing for chefs. So I went from Calvin Klein, like in the
Yeah.
90s, that was like this, like billboards everywhere, to like, okay, now you're going to design, toques and hats and chef wear was what it was called. And that I didn't enjoy as much. It wasn't
Yeah.
as, it was more of a medium-sized company. So again, not as small as the entrepreneur and not as big as Calvin Klein, obviously. So it was kind of in between, and it just wasn't run very well. And the inefficiencies of that and the people that I worked with drove me kind of nuts. So after a year and my husband and I got married, he said, you know what? Just let it go. Just let it go and do something else. So I did. And that led me to finding a position in buying. And that was sort of out of just need, and also looking at, what things are going to be more accessible and available throughout the country and not just in New York City. And so that's when I went to work for Spiegel, the old catalog company. And I was a buyer in their department. And that's where I really learned like some aspects of the buying world and worked there for a while. And then that led to another buying position when my husband and I moved back to Texas. We moved to Houston, and I
Mm.
worked for Stage Doors, which owned Palais Royal, which I don't think they're around anymore. Maybe parts of them are around. Anyway, they have a big presence in the Houston area, and as Palais Royal and Bell's in other parts of Texas, or they did. I think they're no more. Anyway, so I really just kept evolving and changing as part of it was just my own interest, and then part of it was geographically where I was located and
Yeah.
what I needed to do to be able to stay somewhat in my industry and still thrive and have a career.
Yeah. I like the mix of you kind of leading the way and deciding this is exactly where I want to go. And then also, using what you have in front of you and saying, okay, here are the options in front of me, which one is going to be best based off what's available. I did
Right.
want to ask you, for those who might not be familiar with buying, because I think this is
Mm-hmm.
a big shift in your career here. Buying there's a creative aspect, but there's also a lot of analytical work involved there. Is that correct? That's my understanding.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's very spreadsheet driven. And I'm kind of one of those people I'm both.
Okay.
I have a decent math and science brain, but I really love hands-on creativity. So I always say I'm not a master of either one. I'm kind of jack of all trades,
Yeah.
and my program at UT, there are sort of two tracks that it can go
Mhm.
on, and it's you can be in the merchandising and buying track, and you can be in the textile design track. A lot of the courses that we take or that the students take are the same for quite a bit of it. So there was a lot of business in my background and a lot of science in my background with my degree. And I didn't really realize that when I, said, oh, great, they have a program in this. I thought, oh, I'll be sewing clothes all day and making patterns and all. And I
Yeah.
did. There was a lot of that and a lot of art, but there was a lot of business and
Mm.
science that went behind it. And so that worked well for me. And I don't think that would work well for everybody, but it's still the way UT does it. And it's the way they do their program. And it's a very well-rounded degree. And so I think that really did help me because I wasn't too extreme one way or the other. So it helped me in my career because I needed a lot of flexibility, as you can see in the track
Yeah.
that I went on.
And it sounds like it opened you up to be ready for all these different opportunities because when you were moving to Chicago in a market that's a lot smaller and different from New York, I'm
Mhm.
sure you were able to get different jobs because you did have those creative and analytical skills.
Yes, exactly. Hindsight, absolutely. It definitely played a part.
And that's one of those things that you probably at the time weren't thinking through like, oh yeah, let me get these two skills and do that. But like you said, even though that's not why you went to UT to do a program that offered that, it really has paid off. And it sounds like you made the most of it. I want to hear you also switched and owned, was it a baby changing station company, if I remembering
Yes,
correctly? Yes. So tell us about that because that's totally
yes,
different too.
yes, it was really different. It was probably, let's see, I retired from the buying world when I had my first child, so that was in like 2002, and didn't really work for several years, probably for about, I guess, about five years or so.
Mhm.
And then it just kind of, this idea sort of just came out of products and a need that I saw in the market for a few baby accessories, essentially is what it was. I created they have them now and they mass produce them and I see them all over stores and stuff. But it was kind of just like a simple, I called it the cleanup clutch. It looked like a cute little clutch purse,
Yeah.
but it folded out and you could change your baby on it. You could wipe it off. It held diapers and wipes. And it was just that go-to piece that I thought was really missing in the market at the
Mhm.
time because I didn't want to carry the giant bag. I had friends who'd bring the giant bag and they'd had everything you ever wanted. And I just wanted to take my baby and one thing maybe and, head into a play date or a lunch or a this or go on an airplane or, things like that. And so that is how that business got started, was out of just something that I saw missing in the market. And then I had other products that went along with it and designed just gifts and blankets and things like that, that all sort of went together and augmented. And so I started that business before I had my third child. And it was called Mommy's Moonlighting because I joked it was my moonlighting job.
Yeah.
And again, it gave me a creative outlet. I had all these really cool, fun fabrics that I found. And I found a company that would laminate them because I didn't want just the basic laminated wipe off fabric in black or, tan or whatever. So I found these really cool fabrics. And then I found a company that laminated them and would make it where we could wipe them off. And I found a production person here in Austin that could make them for me. And she did prototypes. And then she also did production once we started selling them. And I sold to a couple of boutiques in Austin. And then I got that business large enough to where I sold it to another company that was going to kind of help me take it to the next level because I'm not a marketer at all. I'm, a creative person and I can do the things that I'm good at, but marketing is not one of those for me. And so I really put that in their hands. And then it sort of fell off as like a pet project. And I needed to take a back seat because I had my third child and I was overwhelmed and realized that I wanted to focus more time with my girls. And it probably wasn't the best time for me to try to be a CEO of of a small company. But anyway, it was great. And I learned a lot from it. And it gave me, probably that first experience in my own entrepreneurship and really kind of taking on something as my own. And it was a great experience. I had a couple of interns that helped me from the University of Texas. So that was nice to be in Austin and to have that as a nearby local resource. And then I took a break for a while from working and just focused back on my family for several years.
So you've worked at a small company, medium-sized company, large company. You created a business, made it successful enough to sell it. It's almost like what other career things could you accomplish? But you still have done more. So I know you currently own a business. So tell us about how you transitioned into your current business that you own.
Yes. Okay. So over the years and all since my time with my husband of like 25 years, we've moved a lot for both of our careers. He's in finance. And so we've gone from New York to Chicago to Houston, back to New York to Austin, back to Houston, back to Austin. So we've moved a lot just because, we're both willing to take a leap and go and move across the country and chase after our dreams. And so in doing so, we've had a lot of houses. And again, during those times when I didn't have a business I was working on or when I wasn't working outside of my family time, I got my creative outlets by redoing our homes. I've always loved old houses and things with character because I think because I grew up in the burbs where everything was very cookie
Mm,
cutter.
yeah.
And I knew there was another world out there somewhere. I just needed to find it. And honestly, I found it when I went to University of Texas. I lived in a really old house with a bunch of my girlfriends and we redecorated it. And I made, couch covers and we did all sorts of things to really make it a home. And that really kind of was the beginning of my love affair with like houses and redoing. And so over the years with my husband, we moved several times and I always wanted a fixer upper. And our first house together was in Houston. It was a fixer upper. And that's what we did together. We just did all sorts of projects together and redid it. And so, we did that several times because we moved quite a bit. And in doing so, I learned so much along the way. I really honed my eye for color, which, I had a love for as a child. I still love to watercolor and paint and color is one of my passions. So but I was able to really use that a lot in the interior aspect with, paint colors and furniture selections. And then also I would do all sorts of furnishings for the house because I've got, the degree in textiles. And so I've always had a passion there and the abilities to sew, and so I was able to make all sorts of things for our homes. And so anyway, over the years and I think 8 or 9 remodels and homes and selling them, one of the people that bought one of our homes in Austin came to me and said, oh, I love this house. And we really transformed the home over a couple of years and really gave it a facelift and a totally different look. And that was really fun. I enjoyed that process very much. And that was probably the 6th house that we had done together and probably the most extensive that we had done. And so the couple that bought this house came to me and said, hey, we love the way it looked when you were here with all your furnishings. Could you help us put some of the finishing touches on the house as far as furnishings go? And I thought, well, I don't know. Do I want to do this for somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, why not? Why not? Why not give it a try? I have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
She's trusting me and willing to let me take this and run with it. And she was great and really organized and loved my style and really gave me a lot of leeway to make selections for her and her family. So really that's how it got started. That's how Front Door Designs got started. And it really has just grown from there. I've since done another complete house for her and her family. She is one of my very best advocates and she's my marketing department. So.
Oh, wow. And you said that marketing is not your thing. So not only did you get your first customer, you also got a marketer.
I got a marketer. I know she's really good at it. And thankfully, trusted me again to do another big project for her that I finished last summer that we worked on together. So that's really how Front Door Designs got started. And then it just grew over time. And, people would reach out to me and I was like, sure, I'll do it or not do it. And there were times where I didn't do very much, but I've been doing it now for 4.5, maybe 5 years. And I'm lucky enough that I've stayed as busy as I've wanted to and too busy at times, but I've learned a lot along the way and really just kind of taught myself this business, which has its positives and negatives, but it's working. So, I'm learning something every day and every day I'm reevaluating, what do I need to do next? Now I'm at the point where I've had an intern this summer, which has been great to have the help. She's part-time. And now I'm like, I really need somebody to do this aspect. I really do need somebody to do all the bookkeeping for me. And so I'm working on transitioning to QuickBooks and finding an expert on that. And knowing that I want to, just how I want to grow and expand my business. And it's been very organic, the way that it's gone, but also intentional. There's also times where I step back and say, okay, this is what I want to do next. And so I sort of have a plan for what I want to do at the start of the year. And it's going to look a little bit different than the way maybe I did this past year. So
I love your story because not only were you doing the thing that you enjoyed, you loved interiors your entire life. So you were doing it and someone noticed, oh, they're good at this thing. Let me ask. When you were asked, you said yes. So I'm sure it could have been a little scary. How did you feel?
It was. Yeah, it was kind of intimidating. Well, and I sort of felt like an imposter. I was like, I don't really have a degree in this. Should I be doing this? And I said, I do have a degree in this. I've known and studied textiles my whole life, and I can do this, but there definitely were scary, doubtful moments where I was like, oh my gosh. And, even still today, sometimes I'm like, oh, is my client going to like this? Or are they not going to like that? But with time and with, the years that I've done it, you start to become more and more confident and comfortable. But for sure at that time I thought, I can't believe I'm doing this. But, my husband was encouraging and I told myself, again, I have nothing to lose. There's nothing to lose in this situation. If it doesn't work out and she's not pleased, well, okay.
Yeah. And
you know,
this situation's nice because the person saw how you design things and came to you. So it wasn't like you were going out trying to convince
right.
people.
Which I never
Hey,
would have done because
yeah,
it's just not my
yeah.
personality. Yeah. I'm just not a salesperson. But now I've gotten to where I'm like, people can ask me, are you good at this? I'm like, you know what? Actually, I am. Actually, yes, I'm really good at picking colors. So just trust me.
I
I had
love
a
it
client
when people own
recently
their
that was like,
talent.
yes, yeah, I gave her some color suggestions. She goes, well, these all look really different than what I was thinking. And so I sort of was like, part of me was like, I'm like, okay, let me explain it to her because she just needs a little bit of explanation. And part of that is just the process of learning clients and how they're all different and they all, they all, someone a lot of information, someone a little bit of information. It was good for me to say, you know what? No, I can confidently explain to you why I made these color choices and why I think you're going to like them in your home. And then she was like, wow, thank you so much for explaining that to me. It makes complete sense. And I'm going to run with your suggestions.
I love that it seems like as you found your confidence, clients also feel more confident in you when you show up and you're like, actually, I know what I'm doing. Trust me, let's
Yes,
work this out.
absolutely.
What
Absolutely.
advice would you give to someone who is maybe early in their career, or maybe they've just stayed in one path for a long time? What advice would you give them to help build that confidence to just go for it, to just try it out? And maybe it doesn't have to be on a large scale. Maybe it's just that one tiny step. How would you encourage them?
Right. Well, again, it's just like we have one life to live. And what do you want to do and what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
I remember one of my business professors telling the class, I feel like it was a marketing class. Anyway, it was a business class at UT. And I remember the professor telling the class of like, a big classroom of like 200 plus people that how different our career paths were going to be this coming generation. All of our parents mostly had one or two jobs within their 30-year career, and that was sort of the norm. And I remember this professor telling us, don't be surprised if you have 10 to 15 different employers or different jobs within your career. And I remember thinking, that is crazy. That is mind boggling. What is ahead of us? You know what I mean? But it stuck with me enough that I look back on it and you know what? He was right. Our world has changed so much.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm also one of those people that I like change and I like to do different things and I like to try different things. And if people are like that and you're curious, go after it. Go after that curiosity, explore it to the next level, see where it might take you. You don't have to jump in. It's not like I went from 0 to 60. It's not like when this one person asked me to help, I jumped in and said, okay, I'm going to have a website and I'm going to do this and I'm going to hire an assistant. I didn't do any of those things. I'm still trying to get to that level. I just took it one step at a time. And I think that made it palpable, so that it didn't feel that scary. It was scary, but it was like, all right, I can do this. This is one client. This is one thing. Nobody else knows I'm doing this. I'm not putting it out there on a banner like, whoa, Betsy Hicks is getting into interior design. It was just one small step. And then that next step led to the next step and the next step. And I think you just have to go with your gut and go with your instincts and your curiosities and passions and see where they take you.
That is a great point. I think it can be overwhelming. I know me, at least when I try things, to think, oh, I have to create a website. I have to make a big post on
Right.
Instagram. I have to let everyone know what I'm doing. You don't.
You don't.
You don't.
You don't. You
Yeah.
don't. No, I still don't have one. I still
Yeah.
don't have a website.
I
And
love
I'm
that.
working on my Instagram. I'm working on it. And clients all the time, I was at a client's house yesterday because you need to charge more money and you need to get your Instagram. I said, I know, I do. I do
Yeah.
need to. I'm going to get there. That's part of the plan for next year.
Yeah. If
But you
you
don't
were to,
have to have it. You
yeah.
don't have to have it. If you're doing what you love and people notice it, that sometimes that's all you need.
I love that you didn't let that stop you.
Mm-hmm.
You've had a business for years now, and you're like, I'll get to that. I just haven't gotten to it yet. So, this has been an amazing conversation. I know I feel more inspired than when we first started talking. I really appreciate you, Betsy. You've had so much insight to share. I want to ask you one last question, lightning
Mm-hmm.
round that I ask all guests. So, how do you fill your cup up or recharge? You're running a business, you're busy. I know you have children. What's the thing that you do for yourself to recharge and keep going?
Well, on a daily basis, it's really coming home and the nights when my family is home, we'll all kind of gather around. I have 3 daughters and we like to spend time in the kitchen. So really just coming together and preparing a meal and then sitting down and all of us enjoying it together and having that family time, and we'll all talk about our day and what's going on and highs and lows and that sort of thing. So like on a regular basis, that really recharges me. And it's a good, like, turn off my mind from work and whatever else may have gone on throughout the day. And then kind of on a bigger scale than that, and what I'd love to do is travel. Travel is like my favorite way to kind of recharge and, just change up your scenery, change up what you're around, take some time off to go and just kind of let your mind wander. And my husband and I were able to this summer go to Italy, and it was my first time to go to Europe, which was just mind blowing. And we had the best time. And I can definitely say I have the bug now. Now I'm working for another trip to Italy.
Yeah. What was your favorite thing you ate in Italy?
Oh my goodness. My favorite thing I ate. Okay. It's kind of funny because it's not like really, anyway, mussels. I had some of the absolute best. I love mussels, but I will say I had the best mussels I've ever had in my life at this little restaurant that you only get to by boat. It was on the Amalfi Coast outside of Positano, and it was incredible. But yeah, a lot of really great pasta and obviously wonderful wine as well. But I will say those mussels were the best I've ever had, and probably I ever will have, unless I make it back to that little place.
You should definitely go back.
I think so.
Seafood. I know people usually think of pasta when they think of Italy, but I studied abroad there and remember going to these little beach towns, and there's some amazing seafood in Italy.
Oh my goodness, isn't there? You are so right. Yes.
So if you make it out there, please make sure you get some mussels.
Yes. I highly recommend.
Thank you so much, Betsy. This has been wonderful. I appreciate you coming and talking with us today. And yeah, thanks for using your story for others.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Career Creator Podcast. If you want to sign up for our email newsletter or keep in touch, please visit our website, www.thecareercreatorpodcast.com, also linked in the show notes. Appreciate you joining us, and always remember, your next move doesn't have to be your last move.